Picture this. It's 11 p.m. Your phone lights up. You read the message. And for the first time in years, your chest doesn't tighten. There's no spiral, no 3-hour mental argument with someone who isn't in the room. You stare at the typing bubble and it doesn't control you anymore. No rehearsing what you should have said. No lying awake at 2 a.m. wondering what they meant by that word, that specific word they chose. Just silence. Clean, unshakable, sovereign silence. Now compare that to this. A coworker makes one offhand comment in a meeting. Doesn't even look at you when they say it. And you spend the next 4 days replying it. You reconstruct the entire conversation. You imagine different endings. You wonder if everyone in that room agreed with them. You wonder what it says about you. You wonder if they were right. Why can one message from one person leave you completely untouched, while one sentence from someone else can hollow you out for a week? This is not about confidence. This is not about not caring what people think. This is not something a self-help book can fix. Let that land. Carl Jung spent 60 years of his life studying exactly this question. And he found an answer so deep, so precise, so uncomfortably accurate, that most people, when they finally hear it, don't want to believe it. He called it Sophia. And the people who reach this stage, who genuinely, fully reach it, become something I can only describe as emotionally untouchable. Not cold, not broken, not superior. Untouchable the way a mountain is untouchable. The storm moves through it, the mountain stays. I'm going to show you exactly what Sophia is, why almost no one reaches it, what it costs, and what it gives you when you finally arrive. Music cinematic, low, barely audible. Stay with me, because what I'm about to tell you is going to explain things about yourself that you've never been able to put into words. Most people know Carl Jung as the man who invented introverts and extroverts. That's like saying Michelangelo was a guy who painted ceilings. Jung spent 6 decades mapping something that no one before him had mapped with this level of precision. The full architecture of the human psyche. And here is the first thing he discovered, the thing that changes everything once you truly absorb it. You are not one person. You are a system. Think of an iceberg. The part above water, the part the world sees, that's your ego, your name, your opinions, your social self, the voice narrating this moment right now. But beneath the surface, Jung found entire continents of material the ego has never seen. Your personal unconscious, everything you've repressed, the shame, the grief, the anger you swallowed because the room wasn't safe for it, the version of yourself you abandoned at age 9 to survive your household. And deeper still, what Jung called the collective unconscious. Not personal, not acquired from experience. Inherited. A psychological bedrock shared by every human being who has ever lived, populated by what Jung called archetypes, primordial patterns baked into the species, the hero, the shadow, the trickster, the wise old man. And at the very pinnacle of this entire system, the rarest, deepest, most integrated stage of human psychological development. Sophia. The word is ancient Greek, it means wisdom, but not wisdom like good advice. Sophia was worshipped in the ancient world as a goddess, the divine feminine principle of ultimate knowing, not knowledge you acquire, but knowing you become. In Gnostic tradition, Sophia was the soul of the world, the quiet, deep intelligence that holds reality together. Plato named an entire field of study after the longing for her, Philosophia, philosophy, the love of Sophia. Jung looked at all of this across cultures, across centuries, across thousands of patient dreams and clinical sessions, and said, "This is not mythology, this is not poetry. This is a real psychological destination. A stage of development where the ego stops running the show, where the person stops reacting to the world from their wounds, and starts responding from something so deep inside them that no external event can reach it. Most people spend their entire lives reacting to old versions of themselves. You're not reacting to your boss, you're reacting to your father. You're not reacting to your partner's silence, you're reacting to every time your needs were met with silence as a child. You're not reacting to the comment on your work, You're reacting to the first time someone told you your work wasn't good enough, and part of you believed them. This is why the same event can destroy one person and barely register for another. It's not about what happened. It's about what layer of themselves they're responding from. Jung said that reaching Sophia requires the most demanding journey a human being can take. He called it individuation. And it begins not with meditation, not with therapy, not with reading the right books. It begins with facing the thing inside you that you have spent your entire life pretending isn't there. He called it the shadow. Slow down, this section changes people. Let me describe someone to you. They are kind, patient, generous, everyone says so. They volunteer, they show up, they remember birthdays, they never complain. And in private, they are consumed by rage. Not loud rage, quiet rage, the kind that lives in the jaw, in the shoulders, in the thing they say under their breath after the call ends, in the eye roll they do alone in the car after acting perfectly pleasant for 4 hours. This person has no idea why they're so angry. They've done everything right, they've been everything everyone needed them to be. They can't understand why they feel like a pressure cooker about to blow. Jung would say, that's the shadow. The shadow is not your dark side in the Hollywood sense. It is not the villain inside you waiting to emerge. The shadow is every part of yourself you were taught was unacceptable, and so you buried it. Your anger because your household didn't allow anger. Your ambition because you were taught wanting more was selfish. Your sexuality because it was shameful. Your grief because crying meant weakness. Your needs because having needs meant being a burden. You buried it, you were disciplined, you were praised for it. And it didn't go away. See, picture this moment. It's like taking a beach ball and holding it underwater. You can hold it down for years. But the pressure it takes to keep it there is exhausting. And the moment your grip slips, even slightly, it explodes to the surface. That's the person who snaps over something small. That's the executive who holds it together in every meeting and then terrorizes their family at dinner. That's the nicest person you know who suddenly sends a text that burns everything to the ground. The beach ball came up. Now here is where Jung becomes dangerous to your comfort. The shadow doesn't just live inside you. It speaks to you through other people. Jung called this projection. And this is the insight that, once you understand it, you will never unsee. Whatever you most intensely react to in other people, the thing that infuriates you, disgusts you, makes your blood boil, that is your shadow staring back at you from another face. Is there a type of person who gets under your skin every single time? The arrogant one, the person who walks into the room like they already own it. That's your own suppressed confidence, the ambition you were shamed for, the leadership you buried because you were told it was arrogance, staring back at you. The victim, the one who always has an excuse, always has a story, always needs saving. That's your own unacknowledged helplessness, the times you needed rescue and were told to be strong instead, the suffering you were never allowed to name. The cold person, the one who goes silent, who withdraws, who never shows you what they feel. That's the part of you that learned to protect itself by going quiet, the shutdown mechanism you built so young you forgot it was a choice. Jung wrote, everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. That line is not a comfort. It is a confrontation. Here is what I need you to really sit with for a moment. Every criticism that has ever destroyed you. Every rejection that made you feel like you were 6 years old again. Every offhand comment that lived rent-free in your head for weeks. It didn't land because they were powerful. It landed because it hit a wound you don't know you have. A wound the shadow has been guarding, protecting, keeping hidden, even from you. This is what Jung called a complex. A cluster of emotionally charged material, organized around an old wound, that runs your behavior from underground, without your permission, without your awareness. And the terrifying thing about a complex is this. You don't have the complex. The complex has you. When it gets triggered, when someone says the right wrong thing, the adult in you goes offline. When it gets triggered when someone says the right wrong thing, the adult in you goes offline. Completely offline. The rational, capable, self-aware version of you steps aside. And whoever got hurt first, the 8-year-old who was humiliated in front of the class, the teenager who loved someone who left, that's who responds. That's why brilliant people make catastrophic decisions when they feel criticized. That's why powerful people shatter at a single word from the right person. That's why you sometimes do things, send the message, make the call, say the thing, and wonder afterward, who was that? That was the complex. Now here is the turning point, the reason this matters for Sophia. Shadow work, the process of facing, numbing, and integrating what's buried, is not about wallowing, not about endless excavation of pain. It is about withdrawal of projection. The moment you can see your own shadow clearly, the moment you can say, the rage I feel at that person is also a rage I carry about myself, something remarkable happens. The charge drops. The person who used to make you feel worthless with one sentence becomes just a person, flawed, probably wounded, certainly not the authority on your worth. The criticism that used to unravel you for days becomes just information. You can examine it, keep what's useful, release what isn't. You start to become harder to reach. Not cold, not closed. Roded. But shadow integration alone does not bring you to Sophia. It is necessary, it is essential, but it is only the first movement of the journey. The next stage requires you to confront something even more intimate. Something living inside you that has been running your relationships without your knowledge for your entire life. I want to ask you something. And I want you to actually answer it, not the answer you'd give in public, but the real one. When someone whose opinion matters to you disapproves of you, what happens? Not what do you do, what happens inside your body? Does something tighten in your chest? Does a voice immediately start building a case, justifying, explaining, defending? Does a part of you start quietly wondering if they're right, even when you know they're wrong? Does the day suddenly feel different, heavier, grayer, because of what one person thinks? Picture yourself waiting for a reply to a message you've sent. You sent it 2 hours ago. You've checked your phone 11 times. You're not anxious because the message was important. You're anxious because their response will tell you how you're supposed to feel about yourself right now. If someone can change your self-worth with a look, you've outsourced your center. Jung identified a structure inside every human psyche that, when unconscious, creates exactly this dependency. He called it the anima in men and the animus in women. But here is what I want you to hear before we go further. This is not about gender in the rigid sense. Jung was mapping energies, not identities. Every person carries within them what he called a contrasexual soul image, an inner figure of the psychological opposite, the soft within the strong, the fire within the calm, the knowing within the feeling. And this inner figure, this soul image, is meant to live inside you. But here's what happens instead. When this figure is unconscious, when you've never met it, never integrated it, never acknowledged its existence, it gets projected outward onto real people. A person with an unintegrated soul image will walk into a room and meet someone, and something will happen that feels like recognition, like electricity, like finally. They will experience this person as having an almost magical quality, like they contain something essential, like being close to them makes you feel complete in a way you can't explain. And they will give this person enormous power over their internal state. Their approval becomes oxygen. Their withdrawal becomes suffocation. Their coldness becomes a verdict on your worth. It feels like love. Jung would say it is love, but it is love mixed with projection, and until you can separate the two, you cannot have one without the other. You will always be, at some level, worshiping an image you yourself created, and placing that image inside a real human being who can never quite live up to it. This is why some people feel like they disappear in relationships. This is why some people lose their sense of self the moment they're in love. This is why some people mistake intensity for intimacy. because the projection creates an almost intoxicating feeling of depth that has more to do with the unconscious than with the actual person. Jung's prescription here is elegant and brutal in equal measure. Reclaim the projection. Ask yourself, what quality does this person have that I cannot access in myself? Is it their confidence, their warmth, their freedom, their stability? Because whatever that quality is, it is yours. It is a part of you that you haven't met yet, a part you've been searching for in the external world because you didn't know it existed on the inside. When you do this work, when you integrate the soul image, something irreversible changes in how you experience other people. You stop needing from them. And I want to be careful here because this sounds cold. It isn't. When you stop needing from people, when you stop projecting your completeness onto them, you can finally start seeing them. Not the image, not the projection, them. Their actual humanity, their actual limitations, their actual beauty. Real love, the kind that lasts, the kind that deepens, is only possible between two people who are not primarily using each other to complete themselves. It is only possible when both people are already whole enough to choose each other freely. Not from hunger, from fullness. And this right here is where you begin to feel it. The thing we've been circling toward. The beginning of a kind of solidity in yourself that no conversation, no message, no opinion, no rejection can easily destabilize. Because you are no longer outsourcing your center to other people. You are beginning to be your own center. But there is one final stage. The deepest one. The one Jung himself described as the rarest experience a human being can have in a lifetime. He called it the encounter with the self. And it is where Sophia finally reveals itself. I want to describe someone to you. Not a fictional character, not a mythological figure. Someone you may have met or may have glimpsed from across a room, or may have recognized for a split second in yourself, and then lost again. This person was publicly humiliated once, badly. In front of people whose opinions mattered. And they felt the sting, they felt it fully. But they didn't crumble. This person was betrayed by someone they loved completely. And they grieved deeply without pretending it didn't hurt. But they didn't become bitter. This person was told by someone with authority, with credibility, with a platform that they were nothing, that their work was worthless, that they didn't belong. And they heard it, held it, examined it honestly. And then they set it down. Not because they were arrogant, not because they had thick skin, but because something inside them was more real to them than anything the outside world could say about them. Jung called that something the self. Not the ego self, not the social self, not the curated, performing, strategic, people-pleasing self. The self with a capital S is what Jung identified as the totality of the psyche, not just the conscious parts, everything. The shadow, the soul image, the archetypes, the wounded child, the undeveloped potential, all of it integrated into a living, coherent whole. Jung described encountering the self using a symbol that appears independently, without cultural transmission, in Hindu mandalas, Buddhist sand paintings, medieval alchemical texts, Celtic stone carvings, and in the spontaneous dreams of people who have never seen any of those things. The circle with a center. The mandala. Everything contained, everything integrated. The center stable, utterly stable, while the circumference touches the world. That is Sophia. Not a destination, not a diploma. A way of being in which fear is no longer the primary driver. Fear of rejection, fear of being exposed, fear of being truly seen and found not enough. Because you have become, gradually, through the work, your own source of enoughness. Now I want to give you something concrete. Because Sophia can sound abstract, it can sound like a spiritual concept dressed up in psychological language. So let me give you 5 observable markers, 5 things you can actually watch for in people who have done this work. Marker 1, they don't need to win. Not because they don't have convictions, they do deeply considered, carefully examined convictions. But they hold those convictions lightly. They can sit in a conversation where someone disagrees with them, challenges them, even attacks their position, and remain genuinely curious rather than defensive. Because no argument can threaten who they are. They can be wrong, they'll examine it, they'll update if the evidence is there, they'll say you're right without their identity fracturing. Think about the last time you were criticized. Did you go quiet and defensive? Did you come out swinging? Did you spend hours afterward building an airtight case in your own head? That's ego protecting itself from a wound the shadow holds. The Sophia stage person doesn't need to protect. There's nothing to protect against. Marker 2, criticism becomes data, not an attack. When someone criticizes a person at the Sophia stage, they don't hear, "You are bad." They hear, "This person has a perspective, let me look at it." They can separate the delivery, which might be cruel, from the content, which might be true. They take what's useful, they release what isn't, without needing to punish the messenger. Imagine being able to read a devastating comment about your work, and instead of your stomach dropping, you genuinely think, "Is there something in here I need to hear?" That is not coldness, that is earned clarity. It comes from knowing yourself so well, having looked at your own shadow so honestly, that no one else's vision of you has more authority than your own. Marker 3, they can hold pain without drowning in it. This one is frequently misunderstood. Empathy in an unintegrated person often looks like fusion. You feel someone's pain and you become it. You can't separate their reality from yours. Their crisis becomes your crisis. Their mood becomes your mood. Their bad day takes you down with them. This isn't because you're too sensitive. It's because you don't yet have a stable enough internal center to hold someone else's weight without losing your footing. Empathy in a Sophia stage person looks different. They can sit with someone in the darkest moment and not need that person to be okay for their own sake. They can be fully present without agenda, without the need to fix, without needing the pain to resolve so they can feel comfortable again. They hold, they witness, they stay. Without drowning. This is why the people who can genuinely help you in your worst moments are usually not the people with the most advice. They're the people who have done the most work on themselves, because they're not afraid of your darkness. They've already met their own. Marker 4, solitude becomes home. Before integration, being alone with your own mind is at best uncomfortable. At worst, it's terrifying. Because when the noise stops, the shadow speaks. The old voices resurface, the old fears, the half-processed grief, the things you keep meaning to deal with. So people fill the silence, obsessively, compulsively, with phones, with noise, with work, with other people, with anything that keeps the inner world at bay. Picture someone, maybe you, at some point, who cannot sit in a quiet room for 10 minutes without reaching for their phone. Not because they're bored, because the quiet is where the unprocessed material lives. And facing it feels more dangerous than the scroll. For someone at the Sophia stage, solitude is not exile. It is contact with the deepest layer of themselves. It is where the clearest thinking happens, the truest creative work, the most honest self-reckoning. They don't fill the silence. They listen to it. Marker 5, they can love without possession. This might be the most radical of all 5. When you no longer project the soul image onto other people, when you no longer need them to make you whole, something changes in how you relate to them. You can let them be exactly who they are. Flawed, limited, evolving, surprising, sometimes disappointing. Real. And you can stay not because you need them, but because you choose them. That shift from need to choice is the difference between love as hunger and love as offering. And paradoxically, this is when connection deepens. Because you are finally relating to a real person instead of a projection of your own unconscious. Two actual humans in contact. Now I want to say something that Jung was careful to say, and that I think is important for you to hear. Sophia is not a final destination. It is not enlightenment in the sense of permanent, unchanging bliss. It is not a state where nothing gets to you ever again. Jung said explicitly, even the most individuated person still has a shadow, still gets triggered, still finds places where an old wound speaks before wisdom does. The difference is the gap. Viktor Frankl, who spent 3 years in Nazi concentration camps and survived by finding meaning in the unbearable, wrote about this gap as the essence of human freedom. He called it the space between stimulus and response, the moment between what happens to you and what you do with it. In an unintegrated person, that space is a millisecond. Stimulus hits, wound hits, reaction. No pause, no witness, no choice. In a Sophia stage person, that space is wide. Wide enough to breathe in. Wide enough to choose. James Hawley's Jungian analyst, author of What Matters Most, writes that the deepest task of a human life is not success, not happiness, not even love. It is becoming who you actually are. Underneath the conditioning, underneath the wounds, underneath the roles you were handed before you were old enough to question them. That is individuation. That is the path to Sophia. In every step of that path, every shadow faced, every projection reclaimed, every comfortable illusion you finally set down makes you incrementally, irreversibly less dependent on the world's opinion of you. Not because you stop caring about people, because you stop needing their validation to know you're real. I want to end with something that most people miss entirely about this framework. The goal of Sophia, the goal of individuation, is not to make you above it all. Not to make you untouchable in the sense of being unreachable. Not to make you immune to love, to loss, to beauty, to grief. Jung said the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. Not who your parents needed you to be so the family would function. Not who your culture promised would make you acceptable. Not who your earliest wounds convinced you to be just to stay safe. Who you actually are. And here is the reversal that sits at the heart of everything we've talked about today. The more truly yourself you become, the less other people's opinions of you matter. And the more genuinely connected to other people you become. Not less connected, more. Because you are no longer trying to get something from them. No longer performing for their approval. No longer afraid of what they'll see if they look too closely. You're just there. Present, undefended, real. And real presence, unguarded, unpretending, fully inhabited presence, is the rarest thing in the world. It's what we're all starving for in each other. It's what makes certain people feel like oxygen in a room full of people performing. It's what makes some relationships feel like finally, like coming home, while others feel like theater. So the question I want to leave you with is not, how do I become emotionally untouchable? The question is, what part of myself am I still refusing to face? Because somewhere in you there is something circling, something you keep approaching and then stepping back from, something that gets uncomfortable when you get too quiet. That is not a flaw. That is the door. The storm doesn't destroy the mountain. The storm reveals it. The person you will become on the other side of facing what you keep avoiding is someone the world cannot easily reach. Not because they've become hard, because they've become whole. If something in this video landed in a way you couldn't quite name, if something got quiet in you, or uncomfortable, or strangely recognizable, I want you to sit with that. Don't scroll immediately, don't rush to the next thing. That feeling is data. It's your psyche telling you there is more here to look at. In the next video, I'm going to show you something that took me a long time to understand. There is one specific shadow pattern, one trait that almost everyone carries and almost no one admits, that silently controls how they relate to love, to success, and to themselves. Jung called it the most dangerous of all the shadow's disguises. Because it looks exactly like a virtue. I'll see you there.